The land stretched wide and dry, a brittle expanse of dust and silence broken only by the sound of hooves moving slow through ash-colored grass. Colt Landry rode with his hat low and his thoughts lower. He hadn't spoken to another soul in 3 days, not since the last farm town turned him away with nothing but suspicious eyes and a closed gate. His coat smelled of sweat and old firewood, his boots of the trail. The horse beneath him, a thin sorrel mare with a weary gait, was the last thing he owned of value, and he wasn't sure if selling her would keep him alive or make him something less than a man. Dustwell appeared like a bruise on the horizon, worn out and hunched against the sky. He entered town without notice, and that suited him fine. It was the sort of place where people whispered behind curtains and kept their hands near their belts. Colt passed the saloon and the church within 5 strides of each other, 2 places where people went for mercy, only one where they got it. He tied the mare outside the livery, where even the horses looked tired of carrying other people's burdens. Then he heard the voice. It cracked through the air like a gunshot, not a scream, but something more dangerous, a command. You lay a finger on her again, and I'll take it clean off. The crowd had formed already, drawn to heat like flies. Colt pushed through slow, his height helping him see the scene unfold. A woman stood tall in the center, shoulders broad beneath a patched cotton dress, one boot planted forward like she dared anyone to test her. She was a head taller than most men around her, and her eyes burned like coals dug too deep. A little girl clung to her side, face streaked with tears, a cut blooming red beneath her chin. Before them stood a man in a deputy's star, scrawny and smug, hands still halfway raised. She got in the way, the deputy muttered, shrugging. She's a child, the woman snapped. And you're a coward hiding behind a badge someone ought to rip off your chest. You threatening me, Widow Dunn? I don't threaten, she said. I declare. The crowd tensed. A man coughed. The deputy spat. And then Colt stepped forward. That's enough, he said, calm as dust settling. The woman turned toward him, eyes narrowing with practiced suspicion. You with him? No, Colt said. Just don't like seeing a grown man pick a fight he can't win. The deputy opened his mouth to reply, then seemed to think better of it. He pushed past Colt with a sneer, vanishing into the dispersing crowd. The silence that followed was almost reverent. The girl peeked out from behind her mother's skirt. You have big boots, she whispered. Colt looked down. Never noticed. She likes cowboys, the woman said, her voice shifting from fire to earth. Too many bedtime stories, not enough real ones. I'm no story, Colt replied. The woman studied him a moment longer, then held out her hand. Willa Mae Dunn, she said. Widowed 4 years. Owner of Dunn Homestead. Mother of 1. He took her hand. Her grip was solid. No softness wasted. Colt Landry, he said. Just passing through. You any good with your hands? They keep me alive. I need a man with a spine, a back, and no illusions. You look like you've had yours broken and built back wrong, which might just be right for what I need. And what's that? A husband, she said. Not a lover, not a savior. A husband. Someone who can fix a fence, eat in silence, and help my daughter remember what decency looks like. Colt blinked. That's a hell of a thing to ask a stranger. You're not the first I've asked, she said. You're just the first who didn't run when I raised my voice. He looked down at the girl. Her eyes were wide, trusting, the kind of look that had once meant everything to him. Before the war, before the fire, before the loneliness calcified into survival. I can help mend a fence, he said. That's all I'm offering. That's all I need, Willa replied. By sundown, he was hammering nails into warped wood at the edge of a pasture. The house behind him stood like a challenge, gray paint peeling but proud. Junebug, Willa's daughter, sat nearby drawing pictures in the dirt with a twig, occasionally glancing up to make sure he hadn't vanished. Willa moved like a shadow, chopping wood with the same efficiency she spoke with. They ate dinner in silence. Stew and biscuits, a jug of water between them. You from the South? Willa asked. Used to be. What happened? Fire, he said. A man who didn't come back from war. She didn't press, just nodded. That night, He slept in the barn, curled beneath a wool blanket that smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. He dreamed of hands pulling him from ash, and a voice saying his name like it meant something. He awoke to footsteps, boots, slow and heavy. He reached for his coat, quiet as breath, then heard the latch on the barn door lift. Willow opened it, holding a lantern in one hand and a shotgun in the other. "You weren't followed?" she asked. "No," Colt said. "You sure?" He stood, heart thudding. "Why?" She stepped aside. A shadow moved behind her. "Junebug." She couldn't sleep, Willis said. She heard horses. Colt moved to the barn door and looked out. Two men were circling the edge of the property, just shapes in moonlight. One held a torch. The other carried a length of rope. "Braddock's men," Willis said. Colt stared at her. "You said nothing about Braddock." She cocked the shotgun. "Didn't think I needed to." Colt stepped past her, toward the house. "Get the girl inside." Willa followed, voice tight. "You really staying?" He looked at her. "For now," he said. "Looks like you've got more than fences that need mending." And with that, he stepped into the dark, toward the strangers on the edge of firelight, toward the fight he hadn't asked for, and the family he hadn't expected. The night did not breathe. It held its breath. Out past the fence line, the torchlight flickered like a tongue testing the wind. Colt crouched by the trough, one palm flat against the earth. Still warm, still safe, for now. Willa stood beside him, barefoot in the dark, the shotgun heavy in her arms. Her nightgown clung to her frame like clouds to a cliffside, but there was nothing soft about her. She traded sleep for vigilance long before Colt ever showed up. "I know the one with the rope," she whispered. "Jed Morgan. Used to work cattle with my husband before Braddock got into his head." "Braddock wants this land?" Colt asked, still watching the man. "He wants every parcel east of Dry Gulch. My property's just inconvenient enough to make him angry." Colt's jaw tensed. "You ever shoot that gun?" She looked at him, firelight flickering in her pupils. "You ever run from a burning house with a child on your back?" He didn't answer. A dog barked somewhere far off. The torchlight dipped, and the figures disappeared behind the shed. Colt rose to his feet, slow as smoke. "I'll handle them." "You're one man." He glanced toward the house. Junebug's silhouette was pressed against the window pane. "I've been one man for a long time," he said. Willa didn't move. "Don't let them take anything." Colt walked toward the dark with a silence that belonged to hunted things. He didn't draw his revolver yet. Didn't need to. He found them by the chicken coop, whispering curses and kicking at the fence. Jed turned first, eyes narrowing. "Well now," he said, "look who wandered into someone else's problem." Colt stepped forward. "Leave the property." Jed spat. "This land don't belong to a woman. Law says." "There's no law here tonight," Colt interrupted. "Only a man asking you once." The second man, younger, grinned wide. "And if we don't?" Colt showed them the butt of his revolver, tucked clean at his hip. "I've got a rope too," he said, "but mine's not for stealing. It's for burying." The torchlight caught his face then, weather-beaten, scar-cut, unreadable. Jed hesitated. "You ain't the law." "No," Colt said, "but I'm tired, and I'm broke, and I've got nothing left worth losing. That makes me worse." They backed away slow, still sneering, but without conviction. The torch died in a hiss as it hit date, and the two men slipped back into night. Colt stood still a long moment, until the cricket started up again. Behind him, Willa's voice. "You didn't kill them." "No need. That surprises me." "It shouldn't." She was quiet. "I had a husband like you once." Colt turned. "And what happened?" "He got soft when our daughter was born. Started talking about church and mercy. Didn't make it a year." Colt said nothing. Willa moved closer. "If you're staying, I need to know you'll stay hard." "I'm not here to be hard," Colt said. "I'm here to be enough." Her expression didn't change, but something behind it wavered, just once. They stood like that until dawn began pressing gray fingers into the horizon. A wind rose, brushing through the wheat and the porch rails like a warning wrapped in lace. By mid-morning, the town was buzzing. Colt stood beside Willa in Dustwell's Mercantile, hands buried in his coat pockets, while Mrs. Holcomb, the shop owner's wife, leaned across the counter with venom disguised as courtesy. "Well, I didn't think I'd see you again, Willa May," she said. "Heard you took in a stranger. Folks are saying you made him your husband." "I didn't ask what folks are saying," Willa replied. Mrs. Holcomb blinked. "Of course not, Day. Well, Dustwell's not as big as it used to be. People like knowing who's who." Colt stepped forward. "I'm nobody. And yet you're standing in our store. Only till we pay." Mrs. Holcomb gave him a look like he'd just tracked manure onto her soul. Outside, children watched from alleyways. The blacksmith paused mid-swing to study Colt's stance. Sheriff Rule, a man too old to fight but too proud to retire, stared from his office door with narrowed eyes. Willa paid for flour and nails in silence. As they stepped outside, Colt spoke low. "This place feels like a coffin someone forgot to bury." "They just don't like change," she said. "No," Colt murmured. "They don't like a woman who doesn't ask permission." That night, as the moon rose and the air cooled, Junebug asked to be read a story. Willa handed Colt a worn book and said nothing. He read slow, voice rough but gentle, and the girl listened like it was the first real thing she'd heard in weeks. Afterward, Junebug curled up with her head on Willa's lap, and Colt stood to go back to the barn. "She's warming to you," Willa said. "I'm not staying forever." She don't know that. Neither did he. 2 nights later, the fire came. Colt woke to the scent, smoke sweet as death. He bolted upright, boots half-laced, revolver in hand. Flames licked the barn's edges, creeping like fingers looking to close a fist. He ran through the back, dodging beams and heat. The chickens screamed. The horses kicked. He didn't stop. At the house, Willa was already hauling Junebug down the stairs, her arms trembling from holding too much too fast. "Back door!" Colt shouted. They buzzed through just as the roof of the barn collapsed behind them. Junebug was crying. Willa was coughing. Colt held them both steady, eyes scanning for shapes in the dark. He saw them. At the edge of the field, 3 riders, one holding a burning rag, the other pointing toward the house. "Braddock," Willa hissed. Colt raised his gun. "I count 3. "3's enough," she said. "No," Colt whispered. "Not tonight." He fired once. The lead rider dropped. Another retreated. The third screamed something guttural and vanished into the tall grass. The fire burned wild but didn't reach the house. Colt stood breathing smoke, gun in hand, heart pounding like war drums in the canyon of his ribs. Willa stared at him, not with fear, but something near awe. "You killed for us." He nodded. "I told you I'm not soft." She moved toward him, slow, Junebug clinging to her side like a ghost made flesh. "You might not be soft," Willa said, voice hoarse, "but you're something solid. And we need that." Colt looked at the girl, then the flame-lit house, and felt something shift inside him. Not sharp, but sure. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. The night crackled. The wind stilled. And Dustwell would wake to find its quiet rules rewritten by 2 hands that no longer trembled, and one child who just learned what it meant to be protected. Morning after the fire dawned gold and silent, like the world itself was unsure what to say. Smoke still curled from the black skeleton of the barn, whispering eulogies to sky and ash. Colt stood alone at the fence post, shade damp with sweat and soot, watching the hills for movement. He'd been up since before light, nails in his pocket, wood on his shoulder. He didn't speak unless spoken to, but his eyes tracked everything. The way Willa limped from a blister, the way Junebug clutched a singed rag doll like it held the past. They didn't speak about the man Colt killed, not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much. "Braddock ain't done," Willa said finally, coming to stand beside him. Her voice was softer now, not because she'd grown gentle, but because something in her had settled, like wind after a long, hard blow. "He won't come with torches next time," she added. "He'll come with law." Colt nodded. "I figured." They both stared out toward Dustwell, where the sun painted the town in warm deceit. "He'll say you stole his cattle," she said. "Or his man. Or his pride." Colt ran a hand over the stubble on his jaw. Then I reckon I better stay long enough to answer him. Junebug came running, dirt smudged across her cheeks, fists full of dandelions. She handed them up to Colt, then looked up expectantly. "They're for your gun belt," she said. "To keep you safe." Colt blinked. "They'll do." He tucked them behind the buckle. She grinned, then ran off again, a streak of wild light. Willa watched her go, arms folded, eyes unreadable. "She thinks you're a knight." "I'm not," Colt said. "No," Willa replied, "but you stayed. That counts for something more." By noon, Dustwell was buzzing with heat and gossip. Braddock arrived under a white parasol held by another man. His lawyer, folks whispered, come down from Wichita. Their horses bore silver gear and city polish, their boots too clean to trust. Willa and Colt stood on the porch when the riders stopped at the gate. "Mrs. Willa June," the lawyer began, "smooth as oil, you've been served." Colt stepped forward, but Willa put a hand on his arm. The paper said Braddock was suing for ownership of her land, claiming defaulted payments on a loan Willa swore never existed. "This is theft," Colt muttered. "This is Dustwell," Willow answered. That night, after Junebug fell asleep curled beside the hearth, Willa poured 2 cups of strong coffee and handed one to Colt. "I can't win this," she said flatly. "Braddock's got the mayor in his pocket and the sheriff half-blind. You gonna give up?" She looked at him like he'd spoken French. "Give up," she repeated. "I had a baby with no midwife and buried my man with no preacher. I don't give up, but I need something more than grit." Colt sipped the coffee. "Then marry me." Willa froze. "You said it yourself. I need a husband." He met her eyes. "You're not the only one needs something. I'm not looking for romance. I'm looking for place. You got land. I got hands." She set her cup down slow. "That's the second strangest proposal I've ever heard. And the first. My dead husband asked me with a mouthful of gravy and a bullet in his leg." They sat in silence, fire crackling. "Colt," she said at last, "if I marry you, it ain't for a loophole." He nodded. "Understood." "It's for her," she said, glancing toward Junebug. "And because I'm tired of being the only adult in this house." He stood, walked to the door, then turned. "Then let's show them how strong a daughter learns to be." The wedding was done at dawn, with no preacher, no crowd, just a promise spoken in dust and breath under the still eye of a windmill that had outlasted storms. Willa wore a dress as simple as scripture. Colt wore his cleanest shirt. Junebug held the ring, which was just a string of braided wheat tied around her finger, but she called it gold, and so it was. By midday, the news had spread, and Dustwell boiled. Braddock fumed in the saloon, knocking over a bottle and cursing the name Colt Avery like it was a sleigh. "Married the land," he muttered. "Married the damn dirt just to spite me." The sheriff came that afternoon, knocking without force. "I ain't here for trouble," he told Willa. "Just to say Braddock's filing a new claim. Says your husband's an outlaw from Missouri." Colt stepped forward. "And is he?" The sheriff shrugged. "Could be, but he sure ain't no coward." That night, Braddock rode up alone. The wind blew in from the east, carrying dry dust and the scent of something breaking. "You think you've won," Braddock sneered from atop his palomino. "But you just postponed the noose." Colt stepped forward. "That a threat?" "It's a prophecy." Colt unhooked the rifle from his back and rested it against his shoulder. "Then I hope you've written your last words." Braddock's hand twitched toward his hip, but too slow. Colt's shot cracked the air like justice. The bullet hit the saddle horn, splintering leather and steel, sending Braddock's horse into a panic. He was thrown hard into the dirt, his pride shattering louder than his ribs. Willa walked down the porch steps, slow, boots silent on wood. "Next time," she said, standing over him, "bring flowers." Braddock spat blood. "You can't beat me." She nodded toward Junebug, who now stood in the doorway, tall for her years. "I don't have to," Willa said. "I just have to teach her how." Braddock crawled back to his horse, humiliated. Colt didn't watch him go. He was already looking at Willa. "You were right," he said quietly. "About what?" "I needed a strong daughter more than I ever needed a job." That night, the stars came out slow, like they wanted to be sure it was safe. Colt sat with Junebug on his lap, telling her how the sky used to look over Kansas, how the wind then never stopped moving. Willa watched them from the doorway, her arms crossed, but for the first time, not in defense. And when she spoke, her voice cracked like a seed splitting open. "Colt," she said, "if you're staying, stay as you are." He looked up. "And what's that?" She smiled, tired and warm and wild. Soft enough to teach her kindness. Strong enough to keep her safe. Outside, the prairie stretched endless. But inside that small house, 3 hearts had carved a place no fire could burn, no tyrant could claim. And the wind carried their story west, of a widow who wouldn't bow, a cowboy who found purpose, and a girl who would grow into legend. The kind of tale the desert remembers. And so should you. Because in a world full of noise and noisemakers, sometimes all it takes is one quiet choice to rewrite the laws of the land and of the heart.